Thank you very much, first of all, for... Thank you very much, first of all, to the organizers to allowing us to meet here to discuss so much interesting and important issue. And I can tell you that since my first day in the Knesset, I've been a first termer in Knesset now for a year and a half. And even before that, I've been handling with the questions like, you are a woman. It's a biological fact. Isn't it hard for you? Okay, so this kind of attitude that politics and women do not belong together, even in Israel of 2015, 2016. Despite the decision of the UN that's being already taken back in 2000, and we had about 15, 16 years now to implement it, I can tell you that before, perhaps criticizing or discussing the role and the situation of women in other areas of conflict next to us in Palestinian autonomy or in other areas, first we should look into what is happening in Israel, in the house of the Israeli democracy. Let's start with having two Israeli parties that are not only that they are viable forces in the Knesset, they are the forces that everybody needs to cooperate with in order to have a coalition of some sorts. That they do not allow women participation in the work of either government or our parliament, the Knesset. I'm speaking, of course, about two ultra-Orthodox parties that do not allow women to run in the lists in any kind of circumstances, unless they are forced to it, like it happened during the recent elections to the World Zionist Union. And there is there are a set of rules that forbids to discriminate against women. And then, of course, a party like Shas that does not allow women participation in the elections to Knesset allowed for a list to be combined with women and men. Okay, so it's a fact that under some pressure and given that there could be a constitution that could regulate such a thing, also these parties would, of course, play along and will, of course, accept something that has been accepted long term ago by the majority of Israeli society. So I submitted a bill this year. It was unfortunately signed by only 8 women out of 34 in the Knesset. Yes, it was also kind of a disappointment for me as well. But we will not be discouraged, and we will try again this year in the upcoming session in November. That will not allow participation in the elections of parties that do not allow women in their lists. Now, we thought that it could be a first step to allow for the circles of women that wish to be active and who have a definite say, not only on social issues and not only on issues that are considered as traditional women issue. By the way, I'm really against this traditional women issue. Does a child breeding it's a traditional women issue or it's a human issue? Okay, so it's really hard for me to out of all of this range to take some things that I said this is only for women. No, it's for the whole humanity. I'm sorry. And we are working with partners inside the Haredi ultra-Orthodox world. Some of them are working in the open, some of them are working in the clandestine, but for the same goal. Do not allow for the significant part of the Israeli society to stay away from the issues that are important for us all. And the first of them, of course, security. Before the elections of 2015, we ran a few polls inside the Russian language community from which I'm coming from. I was born in Moscow myself and made Aliyah in the age of 14 to Jerusalem. It was back in '91. And we tried to map the issues that are important to men and to women. Okay, so we posed the same questions and wanted to look at the results. What astonished us that yes, security, we know that it's #1 priority for the majority of the Israelis. For women specifically in the community of the Russian speakers, it was even more important. It was even more prioritized than to men. Okay, so we can connect it to different positions and to different theories, and to say that yes, a woman who educates children, who has children, she needs to know that they will be okay, that her family will be safe. Therefore, security is of course important. If so, then why we have so little women in the foreign service, in the cabinets that has to do with our immediate security in the army. Okay, so this all, in my opinion, needs to change, and unless, of course, the change is doesn't only come from top down, it's also from down to top. It's a deep societal change in attitude, that woman, yes, just like a man. There is also place for average women. There is not only a place for extraordinary women that are entitled to Nobel Prize. I would like to look now at our cabinet of ministers and check out the men there. Are they entitled to the Nobel Prize? I think we know the answer to this. In this regard, I can tell you that this perhaps scrutinizing the abilities of the women and saying to them, well, in order to make it, to the security cabinet, for example, or to something else, you need to excel to the levels that unprecedented. It's not only would be not right, not equal, not fair, but also impossible. We are human beings, just like everybody else. So in this regard, I think that the movement should be in both directions. Of course, the conditions of work. First of all, we are talking about participation in women in the work force. It's relevant also for women who work in the factory. It's also relevant for women in Knesset, in the government, and in security cabinets, and in the army as well. Because as we look at the working week today and the needs of the woman who also wants to raise a family, then we understand that this combination is practically, it cannot be happening. You either sacrifice one or another. Okay, you either sacrifice your family and you stay 20 hours at your workplace because all the men are doing it as well, or you are sacrificing your career, which more often this is what is happening. So looking at the experience of our European colleagues, and I've recently made also a meeting in the Committee of Women Affairs together with Aida Tuma-Suleiman and Kate Aida Tuma-Suleiman to discuss exactly this issue. How can we influence even places like our own workplace, like Knesset, that basically makes you spend there 15 hours a day, sometimes even more, leaving no space to the family life. This combination, it's the key combination that we need to work on in the 21st century, that will allow women, just like men, to do both. This is the unbelievable thing that we need to combine, okay, that we never had to deal with this before, until 20th, 21st century. And now we do. So I can tell you that being a mother of twins, they are 7 years old, it's impossibly difficult also to go to the committees, to stay in the plenary, to get ready to all these committees and to read in advance all the materials and so on, and also to raise a family. Okay, so if we do not start the change out there in the house of our democracy, how can we ever talk to the regular people in the other places of work who would tell to us, but you are unable to regulate even yourself? How you can come to us with some kind of suggestions? So this is something that we are doing together with some friends of mine, the Zionist Union, and also in the Partisan, the coalition, by the way, such as Rachel Azaria, such as Yelit Nachmias-Verben, to promote the understanding that it's not only women's prerogative, to have a family time, it's also men's. And, until this, equation will come to some kind of balance, we will not be able to promote women in the top positions. Well, they have a definite say on security, on policy, and so on. So it all has to be together. You cannot cut foreign relations, and defense and security, and conflict resolution, of course, from the conditions in which women live today and have to operate. Maybe conclude it with something that's kind of a personal observation, because prior to my work in Knesset, I served as a correspondent for Arab affairs for many years and traveled to many different countries, Arab countries, worked in Gaza and the West Bank. I can tell you that the one, it's anecdotal, of course, but I think it was quite significant experience for myself. I was in Gaza. It was one of the last times that I actually was able to visit Gaza. It was 2006. It was already after the takeover of the Hamas, not before the takeover, but after the parliamentary elections. And I was about to cover the story of the wonder boy of the Hamas, who memorized the Quran in the age of, 2, and then the whole of the Hadith, and then he became a preacher in the age of 9. Okay, so he was a preacher at the age of 9. So of course he was given the text, with some jihadi nonsense, okay, to give away about the, glorious death and so on, and things that of course he did not even understand. And he was, going there, and of course, my cameraman and a man, he was sitting in the men's room, and I was sitting in the women's quarter. Okay, so the men were, fascinating by him. They were sitting there very quietly, listening to him and like nodding and so on. And the women, they turned to, the issues of the practical life, of the surviving, of the, having the opportunity to have a word with each other. So they completely disregarded these awful things, poisonous hate speech that was, pouring, from the microphone, and concentrating on things that will allow them to maintain their life and the life of their children and the life of their families. So in a way, I can tell you that there are, of course, many researchers on this issue that women are less receptive to hate speech, to extremism than men. This is something that we need to capitalize on. This is something that we can work on. And again, we will just end with the saying of Margaret Thatcher, that if we are talking about expectations from a woman in top positions to change the world, then it certainly didn't happen. But nevertheless, she was a great politician, and something that she said back in the 70s was, if you want to have a speech made, ask a man. If you want to have something real made, ask a woman. Okay, so I believe that we as members of parliament, politicians in the government and so on, we definitely need to allow for creation the set of rules and laws that will be perhaps accelerating the societal change that we are going, that our society is going. And of course to support all the initiatives, such as the Blessed initiative that you described, that are going from the civil society, and allow it to make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MK Svetlova. Just for the topic of this forum, can you elaborate on the participation of women on decisions about security, foreign relations, or even negotiations?
Well, I can tell you, as I see it now, for example, in the Committee for Foreign Affairs and Defense, which I'm a member of, about 50% there are women, okay? And the majority of questions, when either there are, top army representatives or Minister of Defense is visiting there, they are being asked by women. And so I can tell you that the dialogue is basically being challenged and modeled by women, okay? What does it say about actual decision making? In this concrete government, we have very few. In this concrete government, we have very few women ministers. They are not in the positions, well, some of them are, like Ayala Chaket, in very, very senior positions, but other, like Gila Gamliel and Miri Regev, although, quite known and infamous, famous, not famous to the degree of infamous, are not really allowed to influence the, prioritizing, for example, of concrete steps and issues. So I think that right now in this current government we are dealing with I think it's the least number of female members of the government since a few years. Although in Knesset we're actually having the record numbers of now of MKs, 34 out of 120, which is still very, very far from 60 out of 120. Okay, it's still very far from 50%, which it should be. I can tell you that, well, again, we are dealing with, for example, Tzipi Livni, who handled negotiations for many years. Yes, I do believe that women perspective is different in a way. Yes, I do believe that women brings extra qualities, okay, out of, again, feeling the responsibility for her concrete family, through feeling feeling in the world is different for a woman. For making this way to whatever the place she is there, it's usually was accompanied by the long struggle, against the domination, of forces that didn't want her to be there, ridiculed her, and basically said that she's out of place. Okay, so it's all of this makes also the the vision maybe richer, and the person stronger. Okay, so in this regard, I think that women that already achieved this, they have much stronger personalities, perhaps, than the men in the same situations.
Thank you very, very much.